One of the biggest changes that's occurred in the last 5 or 6 years in terms of cyberspace hackers or threats is what I would term the professionalization of cybercrime. So we still have the annoyances, whether that's just people disrupting systems or breaking in because they can or because they want to make a statement of some sort, political or otherwise. Those still occur. But what's becoming more and more and more common is crime as a motive for breaking into computer systems. And those people have evolved, as have we all over time. And there is now a much more professional criminal organization that you're up against if you're trying to defend a system. And by professionalization here, what I'm really talking about is the horizontalization of activities in a criminal enterprise. A really good example, if I can use one, was the breach of Target earlier, about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Target was breached through its HVAC vendor. So the way system businesses work now, Target had refrigerator units that sell food, have to keep things cold, and they would lose money and inventory if those refrigerator units go down. So typically what retail organizations do is they pass on that risk to the people who make the refrigerators. They essentially say, you can put your refrigerators in here, but I'm going to hold you responsible if they go down and you have to make good my inventory. Which means that the refrigeration vendors want some sensors in their refrigerators that they can monitor so that they know when there's a problem with refrigerators and they can come out and service them before they go down and they have to pay out the inventory. This is essentially what happened with Target. So the HVAC vendor, who serviced refrigerators, had a network connection into Target. Well, the HVAC vendor got breached through, I think, a phishing email, but that's kind of irrelevant. They got breached. And the people who breached them realized that they had an open network connection into Target. That was interesting. That's not really what they wanted to do. So they actually sold that access to people who make a living dealing or compromising point of sales terminals. So those people bought the access, went in, compromised the point of sales terminals in Target, retrieved customer and financial data, but they don't monetize that. That's a different group of people. So they sold this data to people who make a living out of monetizing stolen customer and financial data. These people in turn had to contract with what are called money mules to actually get the money out of the various entities and to create fake credit cards or other ways to monetize that. So what you had essentially is a collection of different entities, each specializing in something different, including the attack tools. You had another group that write the attack tools and you buy them from them. And all of this is negotiated, typically negotiated on the dark web as we now know it. But it used to be negotiated actually on the open internet. But now it's mostly moved to the dark web. So this professionalization of criminal behavior now puts you up against essentially experts at robbing things, which is very, very difficult. So how do you defend against this? Because there's some inherent problems. One of the interesting things, again, going back to the design of the internet, is it has no real basis for identification and authentication, which means it's very difficult to attribute behaviors all the way back to their original sources. So in criminal prosecution, you actually have to be very, very good at attribution, and this is an inherently difficult thing to do. It turns out, paradoxically, it's easier to attribute nation-state activity to the intelligence communities of states because you actually don't have to find a person. You just have to know it came from that organization or that country, and it behaves a lot like nation-state activity. It's a little easier. When you actually want to bring someone to court, you have to have, the burden of proof is very hard and very high, and you have to have some level of authentication that you can bring before a judge. So very difficult to do. So which is why computer crime is so pervasive at the moment. There is a way, though, to protect yourself. And the protecting yourself is essentially thinking like your adversary, a criminal. And this is what we call sort of threat intelligence, if you will. There's two types of threat intelligence in sort of the larger scale of things. There is threat information. This is what this bad guy tool looks like. This bad guy group uses these tools. And there are lots of organizations that compile that and you can get them from. The other, which is true threat intelligence, is very, very specific. You can do it yourself or you can contract it out to people who do it for you. But that is essentially to look at your organization and think like a bad guy. So how would I break into this organization? What are the low-hanging pieces of fruit? What can I learn through social media? How can I do reconnaissance against it? What can I learn doing reconnaissance? What are the weaknesses in this organization? What are the things of value? Where is the bad guy going to go? A simple statement is that, he who tries to defend everywhere defends nowhere. It's from Bismarck. But if you look at how you have to go about defending a system, one of the things that you have to get over is that not all systems have to be equally well defended, because it can't be. So you have to figure out what it is of value that you actually own. If you're a financial institution, that's fairly straightforward. If you're a bank, it is people's money. It's the banking records. In other words, the adversary is probably not interested in how much the bank actually pays for electricity every day, but they are interested in how much money a particular person has and how they get access to that. If your target, for example, not particularly interested in the inventory, they're really interested in customer data and financial data held by that institution. So you have to sit back and essentially write a threat proposal on how I as an adversary would attack the system and what I would go for. And then that drives, an informed decision drives, what you have to spend most of your time looking at to defend and what things you're looking for as the artifacts of attack. So for example, a real simple thing is if I have financial information on a server somewhere, who has access to the server? And how can I get access to that server if I don't have it? What machine can I break into that has credentials for both the server access and some other access on it, so that I might be able to steal those credentials and move, if you will, laterally through the network. Those are the sorts of things that you then backplot once you have an idea about what an adversary might be looking for. That tells you where to spend your resources and what to look for. That's the notion of threat intelligence. So threat intelligence, actionable threat intelligence, is focused specifically for your environment, looking at the things likely to happen to you and the tools likely to be used against you. This is something you could actually do internally. It turns out, though, that the methodology and training necessary to do that is yet another art in cyber professionals. And so you may or may not have those in-house. There are people that you can get them from. Again, most of the people, like many of the cyber professional arts, the people who are good at this acquired them because they used to do this, say, for an intelligence community. And it's exactly the same type of reporting that you would do if you were trying to analyze if an adversary was going to be able to attack a military base, for example. It's exactly the same methodology.